In our last short training session, we talked about logging into the DNN system and how you browse to the pages you want to edit in order to make changes. In this training session, we're going to dive into one of the core modules of DNN that is known as the HTML text module, the text editor. And once you've learned how to work within this particular module, you've covered 80 to 90% maybe of the core standard content that you're going to run across inside of most DNN sites. There may be other systems that then are a blog module or a gallery or an article module, FAQ modules, document modules, but they all come back at one point or another to using core elements of the HTML editor in place for editing an article or editing an FAQ item. So learning this HTML module is really the very first thing that we want to show anyone in how to work within the DNN system. Again, just as a recap, talking about different versions of DNN, you will see different versions of this HTML editor because it has grown up over time. So open in my browser are several DNN versions going from version 4 up through version 8. And I want to open all of those so that you can see the slight differences between them, and more importantly, I can show you the similarities between them. We have very few clients still running on DNN 4 versions, but it's important to see what they look like and how they function. Similarly, on DNN 5, there were similar kinds of controls, but we are going to just jump right into each of them, talk about how they're different and how they're similar, and then we will kind of recap and come back. So I am opening up here and beginning to edit everything from DNN 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. To begin with, looks like in our 4 version, and I'll have to check back on this, we may not be able to load our rich text editor. One of the issues with DNN 4 was that there was a rich text editor, the main WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get kind of editor, that had some issues and needed to be removed from locations. So in this particular situation, we've removed it, and you're finding that all you can do is edit in raw basic code. That's not preferable for your average user, but it's a good teaching point to at least mention that you can get into basic text mode in all of these versions of DNN. So even though that was an unintended item for this training session, it's a good thing to point out. We'll have people every once in a while find themselves in this mode and then not realize it or not know how to get out of it. And that's a good starting point for us to kind of describe and talk about. Basically, you want to use the rich text editor because it allows you to do things just like you would do them inside of Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or any other system like that. But sometimes you want to paste in code that might get changed or corrupted by the different versions of editors that are out there. And in those situations, you want to work in basic text mode on purpose. And in that situation, the difference is clicking on basic text mode or clicking back over to the rich text editor mode. And depending on your DNN version, whether we're looking at here DNN version 5 and getting this editor in place, DNN 6 and getting the editor in place, or noticing that in DNN 7 it's a drop-down box at the bottom to switch back over to the rich text editor, and that's the same in both 7 and in 8. But just kind of powering through them, I want to show the differences between some of these different editors that have been around over time. So whether they have a particular set of colors and a particular set of drop-downs, they're all going to function in a very similar way. Most all of them will allow you to resize or rescale so that you can work in larger space within the page. Most all of them will, without switching to basic mode, allow you to switch into HTML versus design or WYSIWYG mode, so that if you do want to, you can jump right into the code. And I do want to spend a moment just showing the difference between that on all these different tools. So in DNN 6, it was design versus HTML. You switch to HTML, that's obviously what you're seeing. You switch back to design, you're seeing the view or preview mode. By the time we get to DNN 7 and in DNN 8, we have some more modern tools that are in place. Here, this one's called CK Editor. Notice that its switch over to source code mode is a button in the top left where you click to hit source. One of my favorite things about this particular editor is it's smart enough that if you highlight something in code and switch back out, it will keep it highlighted. So you are able to work on content in a page, and if something is not working the way you expect it to, you can highlight a group of text, switch to source code mode, and see that it's still highlighted that batch of content so that you can troubleshoot it inside of code. But the editors there, once we get into DNN 7 and in DNN 8, are fairly well the same editor. And I'll spend the rest of this training session talking in DNN 7 until we touch point on version history. So in this most modern WYSIWYG editor, this is called the CK editor, everything is made to look and function like Microsoft Word. Any of the things that you run across inside of the editor that are the same quirks that you'd expect to find in Word are going to be present here, such as the Enter key is a paragraph break, the Shift Enter key is a line break. If you ever highlight things and turn them into bullet points, you're going to see it grab or not grab certain lines above or below, just like you have happen inside of Word and inside of PowerPoint. Those similarities are intentionally built in so that it's very easy to jump in and begin working within these editors to edit content. Now, inside of the editor, there are many tools. Sometimes we will turn off certain rows or certain elements of these tools so that people can't hurt their website too far. They can't go crazy with the changes that they can make inside the text. Many times, by default, we'll leave on all of these tools. But of these tools, there are a few things that we use again and again and again, and that's what we're going to cover in this training session. To begin with, we're going to just generally run across the idea that most things here, again, work like you expect them to inside of Word. You certainly have your keyboard commands so that you can click Control-B or Control-I to make things bold or italic. Those same kinds of controls also work in the buttons above, just like you'd expect. Centering, all of those things are fairly straightforward. I will mention that the style and the formatting of the text gets more specific as it goes over to the right-hand side of the screen. So if you are highlighting a block of code and you decide to use the styles that are built into the website or normal HTML standard formatting for things so that you can make, for instance, a headline header 1, H1 tag, or you make something else an H2 tag. If you do these things to make your fonts and your sizes be larger or smaller and you do those changes, then the theme that we have in place inside of the website will appropriately color and size and choose a typeface for an H1 tag. So if you use styles and any of the tags that you find over here, these are going to help you format your website so that it looks consistent. Everything on one page is going to match the way that things are approached on the rest of the website. However, as you move further over to the right, you're able to do more and more changes to the text. You can change the font to be something very specific that you've made manually on this page. You can change the font sizes. You can grab content and certainly make it change color and have highlights, background kind of colors. The work that you do to make edits and changes here is completely up to you. At the end of time making edits and changes, you can change the site's design and concept or presentation so that it looks like a circus. That you certainly have those kinds of controls unless you ask us to remove them from you. But just understand that if you use the ones over to the left-hand side, they work within the established theme or style of the website, but you certainly can override those, not only with these controls, but of course, switching into source code mode, you can edit anything you want. The two main sections or functions that we'll talk about as buttons up in the top are the link and the image set of commands. There are more that we can run through, and if you have more questions, we'll be glad to go into details. But let's just talk about links here for just a moment. Notice that if I have a link that I want to create, I will begin by highlighting specifically the words that I want to create a link for. I'll use the button that is the universal symbol for link. It's a chain link kind of icon. And when you click it, you'll get a pop-up window. Again, if we look back to some of the older versions of DNN, you're going to see that the interface is just a little bit different, but you still have that same icon of a chain link. It's just a different chain link kind of icon. It still has a pop-up window that opens. It's just a slightly different pop-up window that opens. So in this link section, there are a few key functions that we're going to run through. To begin with, if you want to make a link to www.apple.com, you can certainly type that in and click OK, and at that point you've made a link out of the item you were working with. When I want to edit a link, notice that I just right-click or option-click on a Macintosh into that particular item to get to that link so that I can make an edit on it. At that point, when you are clicking and then saying Edit Link, notice that it has highlighted the group of words. You can get in trouble, especially in older editors, where if you highlight all the text but skip a few letters, you will have broken that link into two different links, and some of the letters will be changed and some of the letters won't be changed. So just as habit, I normally just right-click or option-click, and then it does the highlighting because it knows you want to edit the whole link. At this point, of course, you can, in the pop-up, change whatever you had this linked to. But in addition, we'll jump into some of the other actions that you can do. Many times people will want to link to another page that they already have in their site. So you can choose Portal page. DNN refers to this website as a portal. Sometimes you have multiple portals within a website. You are able to use the drop-down and then see the full structure of all of the pages of this particular website. So if you want to make a link over to the calendar page, you don't have to remember what it's named or what it's structured. You use the drop-down, you click OK, and now this is linking over to the calendar page. Another thing to mention, though, is that if you really look at it, what it has done is made the text, HTML, in place for that particular page and the folder file path, URL path for that particular page. If you continue to use these drop-down options, you'll get to other kinds of links that you want to create. There are two more that I'll mention that people often will use. Email is the first, in which you can put in your email address. You can put in a subject and a body for the email message that's going to pop up. Just understand that that's not supported in all browsers, so it's sometimes ignored. But the email address means that you put in an email address, someone clicks on it, and then they will open their own email program to send an email out to that email address. The other option, though, is available down here. From our first choice of portal file or URL, we had Browse Server as an option. And Browse Server opens another pop-up window, which lets you browse the folder structure of your website. And if you have uploaded a PDF and you want to link or reference over to that PDF, or you've uploaded images or items for people to download, then you are able to browse the structure of the website to then pick a particular file and choose that and decide that you are going to make a link over to that particular item. Once you've chosen and have chosen a particular item, then what it's going to do is change that same URL in place so that you're now referencing your folder path / name of your PDF file. So that's how you're able to make single or individual links to documents. The last thing I want to show in this particular pop-up is the target window. Sometimes you will very specifically want to make a link over to a new tab or a new window so that if you're linking away from your website, people don't leave your website, it's in a new pop-up window. There are a few options that will achieve that. If you simply choose New Window, which in code is _blank, it will do that same action for you. So that's how you make something open in a brand new tab or a brand new window, is you choose the target after you've set the particular page it's going to link to. So links are fairly straightforward. Last thing to mention about links in general is if you want to remove a link, you simply right-click and you can choose Unlink to remove a link off of something. The next item that I want to get into is images. Images work similarly to how they are in Word, in that wherever your cursor is placed, is the location that that image is going to be inserted. And that makes a difference on how that image is going to wrap or be structured around the rest of the paragraphs around it. So in this situation, I'm going to put my cursor at the front left corner of a paragraph. I'll often advise people to start and put their cursor in the front of the paragraph. It just makes some of these next choices make a little more sense, be a little bit easier. So here I'm going to click the image icon. It's the same icon you see in Microsoft Word and Microsoft products. When you click it, you're going to be presented with one of those other pop-up windows. The pop-up window allows you to choose your particular image that you're going to have as an item that you're inserting into the page. And perhaps I might switch over to our DNN location just to continue with this without waiting for the other screen. That pop-up window looks several different ways depending on the version of DNN you are running. So this is one of those screens where when I go across different versions of DNN, if I show you the image pop-up inside of different DNN versions, it's going to look completely different. But within DNN 7 and in DNN 8, it's fairly well similar, but the point is the same in all of them. Depending on the layout that you see, the intent is for you to browse through the folder file structure of images that are already uploaded to your website, see those so that you can pick a particular picture and then select that and insert it into your paragraph. So if we're in here, DNN 6, it looks a particular way. If we're in DNN 7, it looks very similar to what it looks like in DNN 8. But they each have different steps or looks. They're achieving the same process at the end of the day. So the main thing is that here in DNN 7 and 8, you're first brought into a similar window to the link one where you could paste or type in the address of an image that you want to reference. Most of the time, though, you're going to be selecting an image that is already uploaded, or you're going to upload a brand new image. So I want to take a moment to talk about this screen and show that the structure you have here is going to be as organized as you keep your files. If you make new folders and organize things and put them in good locations, then perhaps that's the way you like to organize things and it makes sense to you, then go ahead and do so. If you want to put everything into one root folder and that makes sense to you, go ahead and do so. At the end of 2 or 3 years, your site will be as organized as you want to keep it, and there's really not a right or a wrong way as long as you can find the images you're looking for. In this particular situation, we're going to just click on and choose an image. But if we were uploading a brand new image here in DNN 7, there's an icon up at the top that allows you to click to upload an image. And we might go into that into a next session because it is something you need to know how to do. But for the moment, I want to click a particular image, and I want to go ahead and just click OK to have that bring us back to that original screen we were on. In this situation, there are several settings we can make for where the image is going to be located, but I just want to click OK, just so that I can see the default location where this image is going to be placed. And regardless of the style of interface that got us there, we have the same result. We have a picture that is in the very front of a paragraph, and the paragraph words just come right after it. Notice that it's on the first line of text. If you want to edit a picture, you right-click on that picture, and you can go to Image Properties, and that'll get you right back to the same screen you were on a few moments ago. And this is where we start to talk about some of these key editing items that you can make for an image. So, for instance, we can come into the alignment, and we can decide that we want to right-align this image or left-align this image. And notice the difference of what's happening in the preview window. If I choose left-align, then notice that the paragraph has wrapped itself around this particular image. And if we choose right align, then it's going to jump over to the right-hand side of the page. Personally, I like having images that are inset over to the right-hand side. When people are reading, they come over to the side of text and information, and that's what they want to see when they're reading, because you have a ragged edge when you're reading, and you come back to a straight edge on the left-hand side. So that's one of the reasons why, just design-wise, I'd like to have images inset over to the right-hand side. But it's really personal preference. They can be anywhere. So kind of coming back to image properties and talking about the other things you can do here, notice that you can also change the width and the height of this particular image, and you control the border spacing around that particular image. So if we know that this image is going to be left aligned or right aligned, and we're going to go ahead and decide that this is going to be 60 by 60, we can reduce the size of this particular image. This is another topic for a longer discussion, but please do know that you need to resize your images before you upload them to the website. Something taken with a digital camera that's 2,000 pixels wide is far too large to have placed just directly on the website. So try and make them as small as you can before you upload them. Make them appropriately sized. If you take something that's 100 pixels wide and make it 60, that's not so bad. Taking something that's 2,000 wide and making it 60, then really you have to download that whole 2,000 pixel wide picture. It's just displaying at 60 by 60, so you are creating something that's going to take a very long time to download. The horizontal space is the amount of space that is bumpered on either left or right-hand side as margin around that particular picture. So our horizontal can be more or less, and our vertical can be more or less. And what we're changing there is the space that goes around that particular picture as it is being edited. When we take a look at it, you know, we've made this particular picture now smaller, and it has much more padding over to the sides because that horizontal space is forcing that amount of space. You definitely see this much more often when you get into larger blocks of paragraph and content that you want to wrap around a particular picture. But that's the basics of it. At this point, we've talked about text. We've talked about making things as links. We've talked about images. Probably the only thing we haven't done is combine those two together. So you certainly can click on a picture, click to make it a link, choose something that you want to have it linked to, and now you have a picture that is a link. If you right-click, notice that we have edit link and unlink, and we have image properties all present here. So we have the two of those things combined together in one at that point. So with that item accomplished here in this training session, I think we'll stop this particular training video. What we will connect up with on the next video is a further talk about the HTML editor, and we'll talk about version history and also the simple editor that exists on the page.